Kenya is one of the most geographically wild countries on this entire planet, and most of the world has absolutely no idea. So today we're fixing that. Start with something nobody ever talks about. Over 9.5% of every single lake in Africa is found inside Kenya's borders. Nearly 1 in 10. Africa is a colossal continent. 54 countries, stretching over 30 million square kilometers. And Kenya, the 23rd largest country in Africa, a relatively small player by landmass, is quietly sitting on a tenth of the continent's lakes. That is not normal. That is a hydrological anomaly. Now imagine a drive. Get in a car in Mombasa on Kenya's coast and just head north to a town called Marsabit. That single drive would feel like going from the Amazon rainforest to the Sahara Desert. No exaggeration. You start with tropical humidity, ocean breezes, mangrove forests thick with life. Then the trees thin out. The air gets drier. The ground starts turning to cracked lava rock and dust. By the time you reach Marsabit, you're standing in a volcanic desert where rain is a rumor. Two completely different worlds, connected by a single road. Let's talk about Lake Turkana. It is the largest alkaline lake in the world. Its pH sits between 9.3 and 9.4. For reference, that is more alkaline than most cleaning products under your kitchen sink. This is a massive body of caustic water, sitting in the middle of a desert. Nothing should be living in it. And yet, 14,000 Nile crocodiles call home. But here is the wild part. The mineral content of the lake is so intense that it actually toughens their skin. Turkana crocodiles look physically different from every other Nile croc on the continent. The water sculpts them into something else entirely. Here is something heartbreaking. Mount Kenya sits directly on the equator. A snow-capped, glacier-covered mountain right on the equator. Think about how surreal that is. Equator means relentless sun. And yet for thousands of years, ice held on. Those glaciers are almost gone. Scientists say they could completely disappear by 2030. And climate change facts often feel distant, like they are happening somewhere abstract. But this one hits different. Those glaciers feed rivers. Those rivers water farms. Those farms feed millions of people. When the ice goes, so does a dry season water supply for communities that have no backup plan. That is not a geography fact anymore. That is someone's life. Now, consider the Great Migration in Kenya's Masai Mara. Every year, wildebeest pack themselves so tightly, over 1,000 animals per square kilometer, that the herd is literally visible from space. Astronauts look down and see a dark, moving stain across the savanna. It is one of the last great wildlife spectacles on Earth. But here is what people miss. The wildebeest are not just moving for fun. They are chasing rain. They can smell moisture from over 50 kilometers away. Their entire existence is a desperate arithmetic. Eat, run, cross rivers full of crocodiles, give birth in a 3-week window, and keep moving. It is chaos and precision at the same time. Speaking of precision, let's go underground. In the coastal region near Kilifi, there's a network of mysterious limestone caves called the Kaitum Caves. And here is the strange part. Elephants walk deep into these caves in complete darkness. They use their tusks to chip away at the walls, eating the salt-rich rock. But the caves are also a biological mystery. In the 1980s, 2 people who visited the caves died from Marburg virus, a hemorrhagic fever related to Ebola. To this day, no one is entirely sure how the virus persists there. Bats are suspected. But the caves remain a place where geology, wildlife, and human danger intersect in ways science is still untangling. Now, go west to Kakamega Forest. This is the last remnant of an ancient Guineo-Congolian rainforest that once stretched across the continent. It is the only true tropical rainforest in Kenya, and it is filled with things found nowhere else. There is a snake there called the Kakamega blind snake. It lives entirely underground, has no functional eyes, and feeds on ants and termites. There is a monkey called the Brazos monkey with a white beard and orange eye patches, so elusive that most Kenyans have never seen one. The forest itself is a living fossil. When you walk through it, you are walking through what much of Central Africa looked like 12,000 years ago. Let's go high. Mount Kenya is not just one peak. It is a massive eroded volcano with multiple summits, jagged spires, and glacial valleys. And because it sits on the equator, you can travel from tropical jungle to alpine desert to ice in a single day's hike. That is not an exaggeration. You start in thick, steamy forest with colobus monkeys in the trees. A few hours later, you are in giant heather zones where the plants look like something from another planet. Then you hit the alpine zone, bare rock, freezing nights, intense sun, and if you go high enough, you hit the glaciers. 5 ecosystems in one mountain. On the equator, here is a fact that will break your brain. Lake Turkana, the caustic desert lake we talked about, sits in the Rift Valley. That valley is pulling apart at a rate of a few millimeters per year. In about 10 million years, the entire eastern part of Africa will break off and become a separate continent. A new ocean will form, and Lake Turkana will be coastline. The lake of crocodiles with acid skin might one day be a bay. That is not science fiction. That is plate tectonics happening right now. Now talk about the soil. In western Kenya, around Lake Victoria, the soil is deep red. That is due to high concentrations of iron and aluminum oxides, the result of volcanic ash and millions of years of tropical weathering. That red soil is incredibly fertile, which is why that region produces so much food. But here is the dark side. The same volcanic geology that makes the soil rich also makes the groundwater unpredictable. Drill a well in the wrong spot, and you will hit water so high in fluoride that it rots teeth and damages bones. Communities there have known this for generations. They blend rainwater with well water. They test with their own bodies. That is knowledge that never makes it into a textbook. Let's go back to the coast. The Mombasa shoreline is not just sand and palm trees. It is a coral rye. About 125,000 years ago, sea levels were significantly higher. The ancient coral reef died, got lifted up by tectonic activity, and now sits several kilometers inland. You can walk on fossilized coral full of ancient shells and sea urchin remains. The land has risen, the sea has fallen, and the evidence is right there under your feet. That is the thing about Kenya. The geological past is not buried. It is just sitting there, waiting for someone to notice. Now, consider the Tana River. It is the longest river in Kenya, winding over 1,000 kilometers from the Aberdare Mountains to the Indian Ocean. It passes through canyons, floodplains, and semi-arid scrubland. But here is what makes it strange. The Tana has a habit of changing course. Every few decades, heavy floods carve new channels, leaving oxbow lakes behind. Those lakes become new ecosystems. Hippos move in, birds arrive, fishermen follow. Then the river shifts again, and the lakes slowly dry up. The Tana does not just flow through the landscape. It reshapes it. It is a river that refuses to be permanent. Let's go underground again. Beneath northern Kenya, deep in the arid Turkana region, is one of the largest aquifers ever discovered on the continent. The Lodokipi Basin Aquifer holds an estimated 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water. That is more than Lake Turkana's entire volume. But there is a catch. The water is fossil water. It fell as rain over 5,000 years ago. It will not refill in any human time frame, and extracting it is expensive and technically difficult. So right now, that massive lake of ancient fresh water sits beneath one of the driest places on Earth, out of reach for most of the people who need it. It is a cruel geography joke. Now think about altitude for a moment. Kenya has the second highest average elevation of any country in Africa, just behind Lesotho. Large portions of the country sit above 1,500 meters. That is why Nairobi, barely south of the equator, has mild weather year-round. That is why you can freeze at night in the Rift Valley. The equator gives you the sun, but altitude gives you the cold. And that combination, equatorial sun and highland chill, creates microclimates that do not exist anywhere else. You can be sunburnt and shivering at the same time. Let's talk about the wind. The Turkana jet is a powerful low-level wind that blows through the Rift Valley nearly year-round. It accelerates between the Ethiopian and Kenyan highlands, funneling air like a hose. Those winds have shaped everything in northern Kenya. They carve dunes out of volcanic ash. They dry out lakes. They make the region one of the windiest places in Africa. And recently, Kenya has started building wind farms there. The same wind that has tortured travelers for centuries now generates power for millions. The geography was always there. Only the technology changed. Here's a strange one. There's a hill in western Kenya called Kitmakai. It is a massive rock formation that looks like 3 boulders stacked on top of each other. The Luo people consider it sacred. And if you stand in the right spot at the right time of day, you will hear a low humming sound coming from inside the rocks. Geologists say it is wind resonating through narrow fissures. Local elders say it is the spirit of the grandmother weeping. Either way, it is real. You can record on your phone. The rock hums. Finally, let's end where we started. Lakes. There's a lake in Kenya called Lake Bogoria. It is shallow, alkaline, and less than 30 square kilometers. Nobody would call it a major lake. And yet, every evening, thousands of flamingos land there simultaneously. They turn the shoreline pink. They feed on cyanobacteria that only grow in that specific alkaline soup. And here's the insane part. Those flamingos travel between Kenya's Rift Valley lakes in patterns that no computer has fully predicted. They know when one lake's bacteria bloom is starting. They know when another lake's pH is too high. They have been doing this for millennia. No maps, no forecasts, just instinct and wind and ancient memory. Kenya is not a country. It is a collection of worlds pressed together. Acid lakes with armored crocodiles, equatorial glaciers that are dying, forests older than most civilizations, and rivers that move on their own. Most of the world has no idea. Now you do.